Art. What is art? Well, in a very vague definition, art can be defined as anything anyone wants it to be. This tapestry right behind me, that's clearly art. Someone put their time and effort into this and developed it into a tapestry. Art is just one part of a wide variety of different mediums there are out there. For instance, in specific art, we have like sketching, painting, animation. Little side note, this video here explains how well art can be. Art is expression, and expression is art. Now, with that being said, let's start off this list with one of the most well-known artists, Vincent van Gogh. I would say Van Gogh is a quite interesting person to look at. For instance, in one decade, he made around 2,100 paintings, 860 of which were oil paintings, which, if you know anything about oil paintings, they take forever to do. His most well-known piece of art, Starry Night, whenever this had come to public eye, it was something that people had never seen before, especially in oil painting. But one interesting thing about Van Gogh is he was never famous in his years of living. It wasn't until after his death, via suicide, as historians claim, was he well known for his art. Moving on to the next person, John Singer Sargent. He is most well known for his portraits. It was quoted that he was leading portrait painter of his generation. He was most well known for his different art mediums that he would portray, such as charcoal, oil painting, watercolor, and so on and so forth. He basically dipped his toes into all different types of mediums, which is why he is proclaimed as the most famous portrait painter of his time. Next, we move on to N.C. Wyeth. In his own words, he states, and I quote, "Painting and illustration cannot be mixed. One cannot merge from one into the other." And then we move on to Edward Hopper. He is most well known for his artwork, Nighthawks. The painting is a late night city street with a diner that is serving people still and emphasizing on a little bit of the nightlife of America during this time. He is very well known for creating a new movement of realistic paintings in the 1960s and 1970s. Now, you might be asking yourself, what does this have to do with film exactly? Well, I believe, and many others can most likely back me up on this, that when it comes to film, art has a huge role to play in it. It doesn't matter if it is a charcoal drawing, watercolor, oil painting, whatever it is, it very accurately puts what people can look for in movies, whether it's the portraits or rather close-ups in films, or an establishing shot where it's just an entire setting all in one shot. One frame, one portrait, one whatever you want to call it. Music. So the first person that we're going to focus on is none other than Miles Davis. Miles Davis started his career at Lincoln High School, where his father was the music teacher. So Miles Davis was surrounded by jazz his whole entire life. Miles Davis is quoted stating, "After I had heard and played with Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Art Blakey, Sarah Vaughan, and Mr. B himself, I knew I had to be in New York, where the action was." And that brings us to our next person, Charlie Parker Jr., or otherwise known as Bird or Yardbird. Charlie Parker is most well known for his development and leadership in a new form of jazz called bebop, a faster tempo than what people were normally used to when it came to jazz. More of the upbeat and more dancey type of music. Photographers. Now, I think it should go without saying that photography and cinematography or filmmaking go directly hand in hand. Now, first up that we have is a man by the name of Ouija. He was born in Lemberg, now in Ukraine, and he first worked as a photographer at the age of 14. And now we move on to a gentleman by the name of Alfred Stieglitz. Very well known for making photography a more profitable art medium. Now we move into my personal favorite subject, classical composers. Now, while these composers were not making any music specifically for movies, it can't go unnoticed that their music has inspired hundreds of different stuff. For instance, Gustav Holst. Without him, the Star Wars soundtrack would not be the same. Without Gustav Holst's employment in making the planets, such as Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and so on and so forth, without those, we most likely would not have the Star Wars soundtrack we have today. With that being said, we couldn't have Gustav Holst without having the two biggest names in classical composure, and that is Beethoven and Mozart. Beethoven is most well known for his Fifth Symphony, whereas Mozart, whenever you bring up Mozart in any musical sense, people are going to associate the base of classical music with Mozart.